Couple of days ago, I was presenting at Code Camp some Visuino and Delphi sessions, and I got a very nice surprise. One of the attendees brought me this really cool remote control insect robot kit. Now, I obviously want to upgrade it with some form of microcontroller, but first I'll assemble it as a simple remote control kit, and then I will decide what kind of controller I will put on top of it and what kind of sensors I will add, and we'll try to make something really cool. I have already some ideas, but let's start with the kit and see how it will develop. So now I will start assembling the kit, and I hope you will enjoy the process. Move the box aside. I will use some tools, something to cut the plastic parts, and some files to polish them. We'll start by looking at the manual first. Probably the simplest part to assemble would be the remote and the motors. I'll open the back. So what will be necessary is to cut those few pieces from the plastic. This one is very neatly cut. Repeat the same with the other one. Now I will use one of the files to polish it a little bit in the places where I cut, so it will be smooth. Not really necessary, but I will smooth this surface as well. Okay, the handles are ready. There are some springs that we'll need to add. They are probably in this bag. Yes, they are. I see them already. So we'll open this bag as well. The parts are in this little bag here. there is also this little tube with grease. I think I'll have to cut it a little cleaner. May very well already be open. Yes, it is. And now they recommend to grease some of the locations. So we need to grease those few points here, 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 and here. Apply a small amount of grease. Close the greasing tube. The controllers should be oriented. Well, they will move back and forth, this switch here. So they will be mounted with this spring on the outer side, the side that curves outward. The spring will go right here on the side. I will use this small screwdriver to point. So right here on the side we have this area here, which will hold the spring. The spring goes on top of it. This part of the handle will control this slider, and it has to go in those slots of the slider. And now you can see that I can move the handle, and this will control the slider, and the spring will return the handle in neutral position. We can move it a few times to spread the lubricant. We'll repeat the same procedure with this one, placing the spring on top like this. And then putting it in its location and inserting this axle here in its slots. Okay. This probably is everything on this part. This is step number 1 in the manual. We just did this. Now we move to step number 2. For this we'll need to open the parts from this back. Cut this extra plastic and start assembling. According to the instruction, those little joysticks here, sliders, will come like this, with the metal connectors for the batteries and the wires pointing on this side, going out of the controller. This module appears symmetric. I'll place it here. And then we'll use these two long screws to connect the parts together. The set includes this little screwdriver, which I can use to tighten the parts together. Okay, this already starts to look like operational remote controller. Now I need to take these metal connectors for the batteries and slide them right here. They should just slide and snap in place. Probably already properly inserted. So if I have assembled everything properly, I should be able to start controlling the motors if I add some batteries. I will not rush to add batteries yet to avoid well, actually, why not? Let's go ahead and insert two batteries and see how it all will work for now. The set uses two AA batteries. Here it's clearly marked plus and minus for each of the batteries. They go opposite ways. So this one goes minus plus, this one goes plus minus. So minus plus, and this one is plus minus. And you can see that I can control this motor, and here I can control this motor. So my remote control assembly appears to be properly done. I will remove the batteries for now. To avoid accidentally starting the motors while I do the assembly, but at the end we'll put them back together and run the robot. The next step of the assembly process is to assemble the motors with their gearboxes. I'll take them from their back. The gearboxes. We also will need the small gears from this bag to attach to the motors. I think I'll simply have to tear this back. Probably like this. So I will start by inserting this gear on one of the motors. Let me make sure that, yes, the gear can enter once inserted on the motor. So I simply slide it on the motor's axle. I will measure how much I have to. Probably all the way from what I can see. So I will put this axle to be supported on the table, not to apply too much force on the motor bearings, and I will use the back of the screwdriver to press the gear in place. The gear is fully inserted in place, and I can insert this motor like this. Once the motor is inserted in place, I can use this cover to secure it properly in place. This cover actually simply protects the wires on this side. It does not seem to serve any other mounting purpose. Now I will continue with the second motor and its little gear. Carefully not to break the wires. Give them some slack. Place the motor on the table and start inserting the gear in place. Use again the back of the screwdriver and press toward the table, avoiding as much as possible applying force on the bearings of the motor. If you just hold the motor and press, all the force will go into those bearings, and that is not recommended. It is best the bearings not to be damaged, which will prolong the life of your motor. This gear is pretty much in place. I will press a little bit more to make sure it's fully inserted. Okay, now it is. And again, I'll slide the motor in place, make sure the gears are locked. And I'll apply the protective cover like this, snap it in place. The two motors are ready to be mounted on the robot. I did not oil the gear, but I can oil it now. I'll grease it. I can grease this green I can actually take out the motor, it's not that difficult, and just grease the gear. I the step of greasing it, but that's not a problem, and probably will be something that needs to be done periodically. So this motor is greased, inserted back in place, and I will repeat the same procedure with this motor. Remove the protective cover, take out carefully the motor, grease it, close the greasing tube, insert the motor again and place the protective cover. So both motors are now properly greased, their gearboxes are properly greased, and we can move to the next step, mounting the motors on the chassis. Before we go ahead, I would like to see how it all fits. So one of the motors will be mounted like this. I will have to free the wires so I have enough slack to mount properly the motors. The second motor is mounted in the opposite way. This way their axles from the gearboxes will point outwards. Let me make sure. Yes, they have different colors. The red-white cable should be on this side, and actually no, this is not true. So if we orient the robot like this, this is the front side, the one that's more rounded, the more square is the back side. So the cable with red and white should come on this side, and the yellow and blue should come on this side. So right here it says yellow and blue, red and white, oriented exactly like this. And now I can start mounting the motors to the chassis. I will see where the cable goes later. Okay, seems like the cable is going to go on the top of the chassis, so that's not a problem at all. For now, I can simply go ahead, find the right screws, there should be a list of parts, 2.6 by 8 millimeters. 2.6 by 8 millimeters. It appears that those are the smallest screws here, which are these darker color screws. I'll show you all the screws together. So these little ones, a little bit darker color and with relatively small head, appear to be the screws we should be using. Okay, I'll give them a shot, starting with one of the motors, inserting in the hole. Do not over tight, leave some slack so the motor can adjust, and mount the second one. Again, do not over tight until we have assembled both motors. and know that everything is nice and neat in place. Loosely tighten. And the last little screw in this hole right here. Now I can tighten all the screws in place. If necessary, I can always loosen them a little bit later for some minor adjustments, but this should be everything necessary to mount the motors in place. Now for these wires, the recommended way is to run them through those little slots right here, pair them together and bring them on top of the chassis. Repeat the same procedure here. Insert the cables into this slot and from here direct them on top of the chassis. The cables will exit the robot from this point Well, unfortunately the camera decided to cut during the recording. This is the first time I was doing such a long recording on a single camera. So I will quickly recap the steps that the camera missed. So first I took out all of the legs and mounted those rubber boots on them as shown in this picture here. And I use the screws to secure them in place. Next, I cut those A3 pins, took the pin and inserted through one of the rods right here in the central leg from the flat part toward this sticking part, and it is secure in place. Again, I'm really sorry that the camera, without my knowledge, decided to stop recording. I did that for both legs of the center. Next, I inserted those A2 parts from here on the motor shafts on both sides. The part that is more flat, you can see it right here, this has this flat big area, goes on the motor shaft, and then I use this metal pin to protrude it through this opening in the center into this connection point here, and through two connection rods right here, and I repeat this on both sides of the robot. Next, I inserted at the front side of the robot, this front side, I inserted a metal shaft that goes through two of the end legs with those sticky parts on the outside and the boots on the outside, and I placed A1 heads, which are these A1 heads here from the set. After that, I took the other end from one of the rods coming from the central part of the middle leg, and I used push-through pins, A3 pins, to go through those openings and mount on the end legs. I did that for both legs, which was this step right here. And I did the final step, which was almost identical, protruding the metal rod on the back, taking very carefully the rod that comes from the end point of the central leg and placing that rod on the shaft. Right here, the shaft goes through the end of the rod, through the two end legs, and then I place the A1 heads on top of the legs, like this. And finally, the final step, the remaining rod, placing it on the inside, as they recommend, of the other rod here that you are crossed, with the last one going on the inner side of the robot. From the central joint of the central leg to the end point of this leg, and then I use push-through pin to go through it, and the same on the other side, and that's it. Here is the robot, and now I can quickly test it. There is also a ball and a goal, but I will not show assembling them. They should be very simple, the two parts of the ball just going into each other, and they recommend placing some plastic pieces inside the ball, probably to make it heavier. I will experiment with that, and I may or may not record a video of the process. Nonetheless, this is the robot, the Tamiya insect remote control robot, and I will quickly demonstrate it. I already placed the two batteries with the plus and minus as shown on the instructions, and now I can control the left and right side of the robot and run both of them in the same direction, opposite directions, or only one of them, and control the robot. Next, I will see what kind of controller I would like to install on the robot and what kind of sensors I will place on it, and try to make some more interesting self-navigating or remotely controlled projects with it. Should be fun. Thank you for watching the video, and again I'm sorry that part of the assembly process was not recorded, but it was not that complex assembly process. There are just 2 or 3 steps of the manual, and they were fairly simple. So you should be able easily to do the same type of assembly yourself. I will be much more careful with the camera, knowing that it has the habit of stopping recording after a while, and I will try to check it more often during the recordings in the future.